On a lonely stretch of beach, a struggling writer named Bablu Birchada drifts through life without purpose. With no steady work and nothing meaningful to occupy his days, he spends his time sitting by the shore, watching the world pass by. One day, his attention is captured by a young woman named Kompachewski, who seems just as lost and lonely as he is. Their eyes meet, and after a long moment of silent curiosity, Bablu gathers the courage to approach her. As they begin talking, we learn that Kampa is recovering from a painful breakup and is desperately searching for someone who can fill the emotional void left behind. What begins as a casual encounter quickly grows into something deeper. Day after day, they spend more time together, and before long, their attraction blossoms into romance. Kampa becomes completely devoted to Bablu, believing she has finally found the man who understands her, while Bablu enjoys the affection and attention he has never received before. As their relationship grows stronger, Kampa invites Bablu to move into her apartment so he can focus on his writing career. Months pass, but instead of building a future, Bablu becomes increasingly lazy and irresponsible. While Kampa works hard to support them both, Bablu spends his days doing nothing productive. Eventually, Kampa confronts him about his behavior, hoping to inspire him to change. Instead, Bablu reacts with anger, turning the argument against her before storming out and abandoning the life they built together. In a moment of frustration, he throws away his typewriter, symbolically destroying the career he once dreamed of having. Alone, broke, and directionless, Bablu wanders aimlessly until fate introduces him to a man named Johnny Ginnewer. Seeing Bablu's miserable condition, Johnny offers him a place to stay and promises him work. With no better options available, Bablu accepts and follows Johnny toward an entirely new chapter of his life. Johnny welcomes Bablu onto his boat, where he lives with his wife Kangali and his son Barbati. Touched by Johnny's kindness, Bablu begins helping with daily work and slowly settles into his new surroundings. Yet despite finding stability, he cannot completely let go of Kampa. Eventually, she returns to him, unable to forget their relationship, their romance resumes, and during one private meeting, Kampa reveals something shocking. She believes she is pregnant and insists that the child belongs to Bablu. The news terrifies him. Rather than accepting responsibility, he immediately begins looking for a way out. Kampa pressures him to marry her, but Bablu's fear grows stronger with every word. Desperate to escape the situation, he flees the conversation. Kampa follows after him, trying to convince him to stay, but tragedy strikes when she suddenly slips and falls into the sea. Unable to swim, she is pulled beneath the waves. Bablu briefly considers helping her, but selfish thoughts take over, and he chooses to walk away. Days later, Bablu returns to the shoreline where the accident occurred and discovers Kampa's lifeless body floating in the water. He immediately calls Johnny for help, and together they bring her body back to shore. Although Bablu feels guilt deep inside, he hides the truth about what really happened. Soon the police arrive and begin investigating the mysterious death. However, lacking evidence and witnesses, they fail to uncover anything suspicious and eventually close the case. 5 days pass, and Bablu's sadness seems less connected to Kampa's death and more connected to the emptiness left behind in his own life. One night, unable to sleep, he notices something unusual about Johnny's household. He observes the struggles within Johnny's marriage and realizes that years of bad habits and destructive behavior have weakened the bond between Johnny and Kangali. Bablu's selfish nature once again begins steering him toward dangerous choices, setting the stage for another betrayal. As time goes on, Bablu grows increasingly close to Kangali. What starts as subtle flirting gradually develops into a secret attraction. Kangali, neglected and unhappy in her marriage, finds comfort in Bablu's attention. Meanwhile, Johnny remains unaware of the growing connection forming right under his nose. Eventually, an opportunity presents itself when Johnny leaves with his son, giving Bablu and Kangali time alone together. Their relationship crosses a line, and before long they become deeply involved with one another. Days turn into weeks, and their secret affair continues in the shadows. Neither of them stops to consider the consequences of their actions or the devastation that will follow if Johnny learns the truth. The bond between them grows stronger, while the trust Johnny placed in Bablu slowly moves toward complete destruction. Unknowingly, the man who rescued Bablu from homelessness is about to suffer the ultimate betrayal from the person he treated like family. The truth eventually reaches Johnny, and the revelation shatters him completely. Heartbroken and furious, he confronts Bablu, reminding him of everything he had done to help him. Johnny had given him shelter, work, friendship, and a place within his family, only to be repaid with deception. Bablu offers weak apologies and claims he plans to leave, but the damage has already been done. Unable to endure the pain, Johnny walks away from his own life. Afterward, Bablu remains on the boat, continuing his relationship with Kangali. Yet when she begins talking about commitment and marriage, Bablu immediately rejects the idea. He wants companionship without responsibility, pleasure without sacrifice. Around this time, Kangali receives news that her sister, Bagad Billow, has lost her husband. Hoping to comfort her grieving sister, Kangali brings her onto the boat, unaware that Bablu's presence will soon create another complicated situation. Bagad Billow arrives carrying the weight of loss, but when she meets Bablu, a new attraction begins to form almost instantly. Kangali remains oblivious to what is happening and even encourages them to spend time together, believing it might help her sister recover from her grief. The two wander through town, visit a bar, and gradually become closer. Eventually, their growing chemistry becomes impossible to hide. When Kangali discovers the truth, she feels betrayed and devastated. Just like Johnny before her, she chooses to leave the boat behind. With another relationship destroyed, Bablu once again abandons his surroundings and moves on. His journey leads him to a bar where he meets Jagan Jarila, a man kind enough to offer him a cheap room and introduce him to his wife. Unfortunately, history repeats itself. Bablu quickly becomes involved in yet another forbidden relationship, continuing the same cycle of selfish choices that has followed him throughout his life. While Bablu's personal life spirals through one scandal after another, the legal case surrounding Kampa's death finally reaches court. Because Bablu and Johnny were the ones who discovered her body, both are called to testify. During the proceedings, attention focuses on Kampa's former boyfriend, Pappu Peshab. Investigators believe he abused her, mistreated her, and had motives connected to her property. Piece by piece, the evidence points toward him. Despite knowing the truth, that Kampa's death was actually the result of a tragic accident, Bablu remains silent. Fear prevents him from speaking out. He worries that revealing everything could expose his own actions and destroy his freedom. Ultimately, the court finds Pappu guilty and sentences him to death. Though Bablu later writes a letter claiming Pappu is innocent and that Kampa's death was accidental, his warning is ignored. The verdict stands, and Bablu is left carrying the burden of a truth he never had the courage to reveal. In the final moments, Bablu returns to the same shoreline where Kampa lost her life. Standing before the endless sea, he reflects briefly on the woman who once loved him completely. He tosses a stone into the water, watches the ripples spread across the surface, and then turns away. Rather than confronting his past or changing his future, Bablu simply continues walking forward, leaving behind another chapter of chaos, regret, and unanswered questions as the story comes to an end.